Okay.
All right. Jaden, you got the news for us? The roundup?
That I do. More than 30 people were arrested at Senate building while protesting Medicaid cuts. U.S. Capitol Police officers arrested 34 people Wednesday who were demonstrating against Congress's proposed cuts to Medicaid inside a Senate office building. Advocates and people who depended on Medicaid for their health care coverage, including several people in wheelchairs, traveled as far away as Florida for the die-in protest inside the rotunda of the Russell Senate office building. Many protesters wore black t-shirts that read, "Healthcare cuts will kill," in bold white lettering. They repeatedly chanted, "No cuts to Medicaid," as officers lined them up and escorted them out of the building. Seems as though there's a lot more emphasis on arresting protesters who are disabled and will die from these cuts than there are manic, crazy people who think Trump won the election. But that's just my
Yeah.
opinion there.
Yeah, of course, because, protesting is so terrible. They have to arrest people in wheelchairs. Like, why not let, I don't know, why can't we just let people do, they're not doing it. Just leave them there. You know what I mean?
Yeah, they're not harming anybody.
Yeah, I hate that where they're just like, we have to force the law. It's like, no, just let it go. Like it's like Karen stuff. You know what I mean? Like, you can't do that. That's against the law. Like,
Right.
chill out, Karen. It's not that serious. Like, it's so what? They're doing it the weird way. Like, what is it? Yesterday, I was driving in a parking lot and someone came in the wrong way. And then I
Mm-hmm.
had to, like, move over to the side. I didn't even have a thought about it. I was like, oh. So if I was a Karen, I'd be real pissed off right now. It's just like, oh,
No,
and,
yeah, they
and
call
waved
the
them by. And
cops.
they were a Tesla. So I shouldn't have done that. I should have Karened out on them. And I didn't. Sorry. There we
It's
go ahead.
sad. It is sad. It's estimated that some 51 uh, additional premature deaths per year are likely to arise from these Medicare and Medicaid cuts. And these are the people who were arrested today may very well be in that direct line. And of course, these representatives don't care. McConnell put out a statement the other day saying that his constituents are calling up his office with concerns about this and said that they would, quote, get over it. This is not a party that really desires health and well-being and prosperity of our society. They actively want people to die for some reason. Maybe it's a religious argument, maybe it's just that they simply don't care, a sociopathic one, but these people don't have a baseline level of human empathy for the suffering, for the disabled, for the infirm and the sick, and it's disgusting. Yeah, and they were zip tied on their way out.
Awesome.
Yep. So
Swell. What do you got
there's
for us for the
that.
next story?
Let's see what we have here. We've got some news out of NATO. Let me pull that up. Here we go. NATO allies agree to higher 5% defense spending target. NATO allies on Wednesday agreed to more than double their defense spending target from 2% of gross domestic product to 5% by 2035, in the most decisive move from the alliance in more than a decade. In a joint declaration, the Western military bloc said that it was united in the face of profound security threats and challenges, in particular the long-term threat posed by Russia and Euro-Atlantic security and the persistent threat of terrorism. Allies commit to invest 5% of GDP annually on core defense requirements as well as defense and security related spending by 2035 to ensure our individual and collective obligations. It continued. The 5% is made up of at least 3.5% of GDP that would be spent on pure defense, with the remainder going to security and defense related critical infrastructure to ensure, the statement said, our civil preparedness and resilience, unleash innovation, and strengthen our defense industrial base. Now, as the numbers stand right now, something like 9 out of the 32 NATO nations are not paying their required 2% or more. I don't really care that much about that, but if the argument is that they're not paying enough, raising that to more than double is certainly going to put people on the back foot here and will not encourage them to pay any more than they already are. It's a struggle as it is. And he chastised Spain for not reaching
Yeah.
the requirement. But this isn't gonna.
Yeah, and then they
This
run into
doesn't
the
encourage more people to pay in. If anything, more would be dropping out or not meeting that requirement.
yeah. And then they run into the problem of austerity cuts because they're going to have to try and make the money back somewhere. I will say, I don't think they're ever going to reach that target. That is
Hmm.
insanely high.
Yep.
That's a huge, huge amount of money. I don't think they're going to reach it. I think it's just appeasement. I think it's 100% just appeasement.
Oh yeah.
They're not gonna do it. There's no way. I mean, we look. We have the most military money that we spend in the world. I think we have the highest even by GDP. It's like 4.8% or something. We're not even at 5%.
Hmm.
Right? It's an incredible cost on people, and the reality is, it's kind of dumb, right? Because like you could say, like, here's a reality, right? It's not likely the United States or Europe is going to be involved in a ground war with Russia anytime soon. I think that it's set the stage for it because they're an isolated nation now, but they're still restrained by trade restrictions. They're still restrained by other countries not wanting a full blown invasion. Like, the only country that could really fund them to do that and provide them with the manufacturing capacity to do it would be China. And China doesn't want anything to do with that. They want to be able to sell. They want to sell to Europe. That's their goal. That's what they want to do. So it doesn't seem like it's going to go anywhere. It seems like it's a complete pointless thing. But also, a lot of the money that we're spending on are these big expensive projects, right? They're these big expensive projects. The problem is that, like with all tech, the cost eventually comes down, right? Because we learn a cheaper way to do it, because the process of building it has been paid off, the way in which we manufacture it, there's no longer that overhead, or we're able to make it easier, cheaper, better, whatever. So we invested in response to this war in Ukraine. We invested a lot of money in air, right? Prior to that, that was our goal. We wanted air dominance, air superiority. It makes sense. You get in the air, whatever. But what we learned from this war was that we don't actually need to invest as much because surface to air missiles are incredibly effective. And you can make a lot of them for relatively cheap compared to what it costs to planes. You can put up a whole ton of these systems to take out aircraft and shut down the airspace. Where those planes really come in handy is not really in a pitched battle. It's going to be either after the fact, or it's going to be when you're fighting off, like some random conflict somewhere in the world. That's where they're going to be the most effective, because they really haven't shown very much effect in Ukraine. Granted, they don't have the same systems we do, but it's a similar principle. You can make surface-to-air missiles really cheap. We found out was you need more artillery. We need more artillery, more ground stuff, more guided precision munitions on the ground. They can take out planes, they can go places. We need investment in drones. And these things are significantly cheaper than the way we're currently operating. And running a defense when you're using drones, doesn't matter how good your AI systems you develop are, doesn't matter how good your drone systems develop are, eventually there's a saturation. I can't remember what it's called, but there's a saturation point where you have so much in the airspace that it doesn't matter what tech you have, you're just not going to stop it, right? So we can produce like millions of drones in the future. That's what's going to happen. We're going to have entire drone swarms. China's already testing them out, and it's going to drop down the cost, right? The war in Ukraine has largely been dropped down to a few $100 drones. That's been the extent of it. They don't really bring in aircraft. It's not as often that they do that. They use artillery, sure, to try and stop major formations and people from moving, but largely it's drones, and that doesn't cost a lot of money. And running defense with those things is going to be significant. So I think that this 5% mark is complete BS. I think it's a matter of appeasement. I think they all got together and went, this ain't ever going to happen. There are some countries that are going to try and do that, though. Obviously, Poland's one of them. But that's kind of the long and short of it. Is it doesn't make a lot of sense to invest this much more money, because a lot of the stuff that we're going to have in the future is going to be ran off AI systems. It's going to be cheaper. We don't have to worry about. We're not going to have to worry about troop safety with whatever we build. It's not going to be a component. It's just going to be protecting the equipment. So you can make really cheap stuff to send out there on the battlefield. You can make really cheap drones, and the cost of this stuff is inevitably going to go down based on what we have. So 5% is kind of stupid. There's no real reason for
Yep.
it. I think it just kind of handcuffs our GDP that could be going to other stuff that would help boost our
Hmm.
economies in that way, and really just delving into fascism here.
And it is,
Fascist manufacturing of war production.
yeah, it is appeasement through and through, and no such instance would emphasize that more than what happened today, as NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte surprised reporters today by calling Trump "Daddy" in a moment of levity in a serious NATO summit. As the two leaders greeted each other before reporters ahead of meetings, Trump drew a question about the profanity he used a day earlier to chastise both Israel and Iran for violating a recently brokered quote unquote ceasefire and his comparing them to unruly children. He says they've had a big fight like school kids in a schoolyard. They fight like hell. You can't stop them. Let them fight for about 2 or 3 minutes. Then it's easy to stop them, Trump said in a press appearance alongside Root, echoing he had used the same language to describe Ukraine and Russia. Root took the fighting analogy a little bit further and said, quote, Daddy has to sometimes use strong language. That is cringe as hell. It's cringe. He was asked to follow up as to whether or not he viewed NATO members and allies as his children. He deflected, but this is weird behavior on a global scale, and I expected more backbone from our allies from these countries to actually stick it to them. But no, they've capitulated. They've decided that appeasement is the route they want to take with Trump 2.0, and it's concerning. Is how far are they going to let this run?
Did you read his or Mark Root's response
Yeah,
at all? Did you see that? Yeah.
yeah.
So okay. So yeah, I mean,
So
he's trying to put it in the perspective of like, he's like, I didn't call. He's saying like the United States. Basically the whole thing was the EU kind of treats America like daddy. Is daddy going to say it's okay? He wasn't talking about Trump.
mm-hmm.
So just for clarification, I
Still
went to go actually look
cringe.
that up, so I'm not sure if you covered that part. So yeah, it's really
Yeah.
cringe.
He said it was a
But is
matter of
daddy gonna?
taste while asserting that that he does in fact deserve immense credit, which no he doesn't.
I deserve all of the credit. We got a couple more stories.
That I do. Let's see what else we've got here. Yes, keeping in line with fascist dictatorial language, Trump calls for the firing of a CNN reporter over Iranian nuclear damage report. Trump on Wednesday called for the firing of CNN correspondent Natasha Bertrand, who reported on air that the internal U.S. intelligence assessment found Saturday's strikes on Iranian nuclear sites set back Tehran's nuclear program only by a few months. The Post reads Natasha Bertrand should be fired from CNN. I watched her for 3 days doing fake news. She should be immediately reprimanded and then thrown out like a dog, Trump wrote on the Truth Social platform. This is the President of the United States, and this follows a trend of reckless and incendiary language and behavior from the last few hours, frankly, not even days. But the man is unhinged. He's calling out
Yeah,
reporters and asking them to be fired over a disagreement.
yeah. This is part of. Yep, this is what he's gonna do. Inevitably, this is gonna reach a head at some point. I talked about this early on, but it was gonna reach a thing where he's gonna the his regime is gonna have to collapse. Right? There's gonna have to be this cataclysmic failure that's indefensible, where he's just getting attacked from all angles, and that's really gonna open up the media to be like, okay, right? Where it's like America's against this guy as well. Where he's already lost various court cases going after people, and there's enough pressure against him that he can't single anyone out, right? Sort of like a mob mentality type thing. But unfortunately, I don't know. At least for that being the case with the media and the media not appeasing him, is that he removed the tariffs, the policies that he had, he's given up on, right? And so the things that would cause an immediate collapse of the United States economy, tariffs, the extent of tariffs he had, isn't there anymore. So it's really prolonged what's inevitably going to happen in terms of the economy, in terms of what he's done to the structural, the sledgehammer he took to various different agencies. These things are going to take time to manifest, and it's going to be difficult. Unfortunately, nobody's really calling him out on anything, because he is doing this thing where he's like, oh, I did this, that, and the other. And then as it turns out, he didn't get anything for it, and they just run it on the news, But we've seen them like correct his words and headlines and stuff so he doesn't look stupid. It's wild. This is insane. And yeah. I mean, Drew, can we just reflect for a second? What a failure of Mitch McConnell and the Republicans.
Oh
They could have
yeah.
stopped this in 2020. They could have stopped this. It's like, it's like, the doctor that created Frankenstein.
Yeah. This is a
Anyway,
Frankenstein monster run
got
amok.
a couple more stories.
Yep.
I think I'll just let you get
Uh,
through these ones because I don't think I have anything to add to them.
no problem. Let's see what we've got here. This is really the last major story here for today. Smoking engine from an American Airlines flight. Let's see here. American Airlines plane makes an emergency landing after engine starts smoking. A video shows dark smoke trailing behind the Airbus A321 before it returned to the airport. American Airlines plane made an emergency landing in Las Vegas on Wednesday after smoke and sparks were seen spewing from one of its engines. American Airlines Flight 1665 was forced to return to Harry Reid International Airport in Las Vegas shortly after takeoff due to a mechanical issue, the airline said in a statement. Video from an eyewitness shows dark smoke trailing behind the plane's engine midair. Sparks should also be seen going off from the right engine. I don't have too much to say from this, but it's scary that this has happened so many goddamn times.
Yeah, I mean,
Keeps
we're going to
happening.
see what's going to happen with the airlines. I don't really know how the infrastructure works there, but I'm just concerned that, like, you remove government officials overseeing taking care of planes and then it's completely reliant on no federal regulators. Like, you're just missing a step there. Or, like, not even no federal regulators, but, like, they're taking cuts. It's miserable already. There's issues with air traffic control. It doesn't really seem to be getting resolved. I mean, I listened to an air traffic controller on TikTok talk about the issues, and I mean, it makes sense. Like, you cannot have mental health issues or anything come up and talk about it because it can be used against you as an air traffic controller, right? Which is
Mm-hmm.
like, that's a weird thing, right? Obviously, we want them to be able to work. We don't want them to do something crazy or go crazy. Like, most people won't. Most people deal with mental stress and emotions and, mental fatigue or whatever. And in some professions, you can't talk about it, and that's detrimental. I really think there needs to be some new guidance on that, some way we can work around this. I know that they've made changes to certain things, like with pilots, they've been looking at ways to make changes to that, but it just hasn't crossed over to air traffic control. And yeah,
Yep.
it's created a lot of fatigue on the system, and we'll see how it works out. Is that all of our news for today?
Yeah, pretty much.
Nice,
That's all I've
awesome.
got.
That was your roundup.